And like I said, we have several news articles here, so I guess we'll just go down the line here one at a time. If you want to start, Don.
Okay, the article I brought today talks about the problem with faith healing, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit because we believe in freedom of religion. We believe that people ought to be able to practice whatever religion, whatever their faith is, but there are some issues that come up with that. This article is from Saturday's American Statesman. It starts off, 11-year-old Bo Phillips had been dead about 3 hours when Detective Jeff Green arrived to investigate. It was 6 p.m., February 23rd. About 100 people were at the house praying and offering support and condolences to family members. An autopsy revealed the boy died of complications from diabetes after suffering painful symptoms for 7 days and lapsing into a coma, said Dr. Larry something. The boy was 15 to 20 pounds underweight when he died. This was easily treatable, Lumen said. It was a simple, everyday thing. Instead of taking their son to a doctor, however, Bo's parents prayed for him. They are members of the, I won't mention the name of it, whose members believe prayer is a substitute for conventional medical treatment. Records show as many as 25 children in the congregation have died in the past 2 decades because their parents offered them only prayer, not medical care. And then it goes through a list of different children that have died from various a congenital defect that blocked the kidney, an infection, hernia in the small intestine, various things like that. And we talk about the First Amendment a lot on this show, and how the First Amendment guarantees free exercise. But where do you draw the line? And I think I get real uncomfortable when it comes to this point, when it comes to children dying because of their parents' religion. I mean, the children don't have any choice in that.
That it's a sad state of affairs that they honestly think that prayer is actually going to cure this child. And I hate to be intrusive, but once there's got to. I don't know if you could set a law to an age limit, somebody under 16 or something like that. But for 100 people to be convinced there and sit there and watch that child suffer for 7 days, it doesn't seem like a very Christian thing to do, if you ask me.
Well, there were 100 people there, and they didn't call the police for 3 hours after the child died. So they all...
Maybe they thought they were going to raise him from the dead or something.
Well, something, but science apparently was not considered there. Going to the hospital would have been the thing to do, but since science is so evil, 100 people watched this child die. What was that child wearing? I read in there earlier, the child was wearing almost nothing.
He was wearing a T-shirt, an adult diaper, and one sock.
One sock, It boggles the mind why people think things like that, why faith healing is so popular with many religious people, when it leads to this. And there were no formal charges discussed, any criminal charges discussed in that, right?
Because this is all the way back in February.
This was in Oregon. Oregon's laws covering murder by abuse, manslaughter, criminal mistreatment, and criminal non-support all include clauses that grant immunity to parents whose children die if the parents believe that God will heal. If you or I did this to our child, we would be prosecuted, said this Green person who specializes in crimes against children. These children don't get a choice of being taken to a doctor or emergency room or having 911 called for them.
Yeah, that goes to show the weakness of their religious standpoint there.
Well, there's lots of people that may believe in the faith healing or whatever, but then they'll pursue medicine also.
Right.
And I think there's sort of an obligation there when it's your child. I think you whatever your beliefs are. I don't think this should be legal.
I agree.
Think there should. I think there's a problem with this immunity.
It also
that they have
speaks very badly for all these advocates of prayer over in faith healing situations where there have been so-called studies done on the effects of prayer on sick people, and obviously 100 people praying over a child couldn't do anything to save him. Well, obviously, there's a whole lot of people who really think that this works, but this is one example in the extreme that shows obviously that this is flawed thinking. Go to a hospital, break down and rely on science, and you might live. But
All right.
Go on.
Well, no, I was just going to remind you, we talk about a wide range topics here. That is our number. It's May 10th, Mother's Day. We'd love to hear from the viewers out there. And we'll just go on down the line and show another news article. These are just news articles we just pulled out here in the last week. We try to keep current here.
From the Houston Chronicle, Sunday, April 5th. If I could get a zoom in, one of our gentlemen here, that'd be great. These are bogus dollar bills that were printed up by an organization called the Survivors of Clergy Abuse Link Up Incorporated. They printed about 25,000 of these bogus dollar bills, and it's hard to see, I know, so I'll read some of what it says on here. On the front, it's got 3 priests here, and one's covering his eyes, another one's covering his ears, another one's covering his mouth. And it's see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And the United Survivors of America Church, take note of this on the top. Anyway, the idea was they were asking parishioners, people who go to church every Sunday, instead of putting $1 or $2 into that collection plate, save your money and take one of these bogus dollar bills and put it in there to give the church a message. And the message basically is that it is not only immoral to hide the kind of abuse that's taken place between clergy, and it's illegal as well. And there have been convictions recently of these priests, many priests, Catholic priests. One very notorious priest in Dallas, Reverend Koss, or Father Koss in Dallas, the Dallas Diocese Catholic Church, lost his case because, he's a pedophile. And the Catholic Diocese in Dallas has now had to pay millions of dollars, and will probably continue to have to pay to compensate for the victims. And this organization is taking a stand. I've never heard of anything like this being tried, but urging churchgoers to give the message directly to their churches that there is an awareness that needs to take place, especially in the church. But everybody should be aware of what's happened with a lot of priests, and specifically in the Catholic Church, but many other churches as well. But the fact is that a large number of young people have been abused and molested by a lot of priests, and there have been a lot of cover-ups involved with the church at many levels. There have been very organized attempts to cover up and keep these things covered up for a long period of time. In fact, Reverend Koss, or the Father Koss, Rudy Koss in Dallas, had been doing it for years. Almost a decade had gone by, and he had numbered victims over 10. After 10 years, 10 to 20 victims, and some we may not even know about, may never know about. But it's important to realize that there is an awareness now of this situation among churchgoers. And there is an actually organization set up for survivors of clergy abuse. And I like to say kudos to these groups for bringing out education and awareness to people without attacking anybody specifically, but just letting people know that there are ways that you can politely and respectfully tell your church that you're aware of the problems that are taking place, and that you would like it to be taken seriously. That's one issue that we talk about.
I think there's a clever way to respond to that.
Yes.
An anonymous way, and these are not atheists. These are Christian churchgoers who are just sending a message anonymously in the collection plate, and as long as they don't try to cash that.
Yes.
It's important to note they are Christians. The group that is putting these out, they are Christians. This is not an atheist organization doing this, and it's not an organized attack on Christian churches, but it is a situation that Christians realize exists, and it is a problem.
And remind our callers, this is May 10th. If you're watching this live on May 10th, we'd love to hear from you. Hear your any points on any current news, like the murder there at the Vatican that went on this week. Heard heard a lot about the Swiss guarding. I didn't realize that. I want to do more research into the history on how the Swiss ended up guarding.
I hear that's a fascinating story. I don't know that much about it either, but they wear like medieval uniforms and very colorful. I guess they're very popular with the tourists.
But I think it had something to do with the neutrality of Swiss as the reason they got picked for the guard duty or something to that effect. But they've been doing it for quite some time, and so I'd love to hear if anybody knows more about the history of that. We'd love to hear from you. But my article I brought in has a little Texas connection. It was talking about the Texas preacher and leader of the largest anti-abortion rights group emerged unrepentant from nearly 3 months in jail Friday, criticizing the Reverend Jerry Falwell and promising more protests. This gives the reason I thought this had a connection with had to do with the Religious Freedom Amendment. This guy has went to the jail for violating the law and everything else, and has not stopped him whatsoever. This guy gets any confirmation from the government, such as the Religious Freedom Amendment, I just feel it's going to give him more strength to his cause. But his quote here is, "I'm a prisoner of Christ, a captive to his cause." The Reverend Flip Benham told about 25 supporters during a prayer vigil. My whole point on that was he was in school passing out pamphlets at the Liberty University, the Christian college that Falwell founded, and were handing out anti-abortion rights leaflets and holding placards outside the high school. I'm just afraid that if the Religious Freedom Amendment passed, they would give any group like this the right to come into our schools under the guise of religious information and be passing out what they consider anti-abortion rhetoric that is, a lot of it is uneducated, unfounded, and based on quotes from the Bible that are 2,000 years old and everything else, trying to be pertinent for our current situation. I just don't see it happening.
Well, is this thing on?
But like I said, there's more to the article. He has a thing against Falwell, which I think is quite funny. But so I like to see the religious groups fighting among themselves. That just we just sat back.
That's very interesting. What they said here is that they said that Falwell is selling pornography at his store, his little bookstore.
But it turns out it's not. They tried to get copies of a book called The Age of Innocence, and we should. Not that I'm going to offend Falwell, but they wouldn't even order the book for him. So that they were trying to set Falwell up, and it fell through. So, but I still like the idea that they're fighting among themselves.